The PBA World Series of Bowling just concluded, and we learned a lot of things. EJ Tackett is the best bowler in the world and probably locked up player of the year. The Evoke Hysteria had one of the greatest runs at a set of tournaments that we've ever seen from a bowling ball. And there were so many other cool taglines and cool headlines from this. There were a lot of international titles, a lot of first-time PBA winners. We had a lot of really cool matches going on. So let's break down everything we saw at the World Series of Bowling this year. Quick reminder, make sure to sub if you haven't. It helps me out a ton. You get notified for any PBA news and all of our other awesome videos. We're going to kick this off starting with not the World Series of Bowling, but actually the Mike Aulby Classic. This happened the week before the World Series, still in Reno, but in a different bowling center. And this tournament was played on a 39-foot condition. TLDR for this one, Andrew Anderson ended up winning his first singles title in 6 years. Absolutely crazy accomplishment for him. He's been bowling phenomenal all year long, so really, really happy to see him come out on top. He was able to best EJ Tackett, which those two have had a nice little feud going on in some TV shows where EJ got the best of him at the US Open. This time, Andrew reigned supreme. However, the biggest storyline with this match was Ethan Fiore versus EJ Tackett had the longest roll-off in PBA history. They went 7 frames strike for strike because they tied in their actual match. Now, this is really the start of the reign of the Motive Evoke Hysteria. The Evoke Hysteria was used by both of those guys the entire telecast, looked phenomenal, and they end up having 7 frames where they just kept striking. Really, really cool match. I'd recommend going to watch that one back. It was a really, really fun one. Ethan has a hilarious comment going back of saying, does this guy ever quit or something like that? Because it was just so many strikes and it's so mentally taxing, and EJ just never budged. He had 7 shots that were absolutely perfected, so it was super fun to watch. Then for the next 2 weeks, the bowlers were cooped up in Reno, Nevada for the World Series of Bowling. This tournament consisted of 5 separate tournaments, 4 of them on different animal patterns, and then the overall World Championship, the PBA World Championship, the one the players always want to go for because it has the most money in it. It's the biggest money tournament of the season. So for it, we started with qualifying for Scorpion, qualifying for Viper, Chameleon, and then ended with Shark. That means the telecast ended up going in the same exact order. So after all was said and done in qualifying into the head-to-head match play, which was very fun, by the way. It was just bracket best of 5. Some really cool matches. You could see Jason Belmonte try to make a run at every single TV show, except he got smoked by absolutely crazy scores in almost every setup. I believe the 2 that I saw that he was trying to make, AJ Johnson shot 1,000 at him after 4 games, and Tim Foy did the same exact thing. Very hard to beat. But let's kick it off with the Scorpion Championships. This one was very interesting. We had a ton of international talent making it. Rafiq Ismail made it, who is arguably the best lefty almost on the planet. Definitely the best international lefty outside of that Jesper Svensson guy. He was able to make it over for the World Championship, and he put on a show. He was absolutely crushing them. However, in this one, we had Rasmus Edvall from Sweden take the win. Rasmus made a run. He ended up running the ladder. He beat Ryan Barnes in the first match. Ryan hasn't had a very good showing on TV, unfortunately, but it's brutal being on TV like that. Otherwise, Tobias Bording from Germany got beaten. Then another guy named EJ Tackett made the step ladder, so he's 2 step ladders in a row at this point, by the way, and he ended up getting bested. It was a very close match, a very good match, both throwing the Evoke Hysteria again. But then in the finals, it was Rasmus who took the win. The Scorpion Championships had a lot of mixed reviews because the scores were so low. However, what bowlers need to remember with this is the guys on the telecast have a decent amount of time to break the lanes down, and this really showcases what happens when the lanes aren't broken down correctly and they don't really break them down together. They all do their own thing. The lanes get gross. Yes, scores were very low because the lanes were absolutely disgusting. There were no good paths to the pocket, as you guys could see. Randy kept dogging on the fact that, well, 200 isn't going to win a show here. Well, it will when the pattern is this difficult. Scorpion is always one of the most difficult PBA patterns, in my opinion. And then having them break down in a weird way, you had a lot of rev rate in a lot of different parts of the lane. They got absolutely torched and disgusting, so that's why scores were so low. But it was fun to watch the shot making, fun to watch the spare shooting, and who messed up least instead of who could strike more. A very different change of pace. Of course, not as fun for a fan. Fans like to see strikes, but for a lot of other bowlers, they like to see a little bit more of a grind. Coming up next, we had the Viper Championships, and the Viper Championships had a lot of high scores. So the first day on Scorpion, scores weren't that high for qualifying, for match play, anything like that. But then you got to Viper and Chameleon, and scores skyrocketed, absolutely soared. And then Shark, they calmed back down a little bit, but we'll get back to those. Going into Viper Championship, the top 5 that made it was number 1 seed Darren Ong, ended up being on top. EJ Tackett, Chris Prather, Zach Wilkins, and then that Jason Belmonte guy ended up being able to make it to the step ladder. It was a really, really fun step ladder. There was a lot more strikes in this one. You saw a lot of really good players. Zach Wilkins making it on the TV show is always fun. He threw it phenomenally. Had a little bit of bad carry. I believe he was throwing a GB5, which was really cool. That ball's GB5 and stealth mode have really been the Brunswick balls to see on the telecast, if you're not throwing a urethane, of course. So really showcases that those two balls are really, really good for Brunswick. However, if you're going to notice, there aren't many Brunswick staffers that made the show this week because urethane wasn't as prominent. Urethane was still big, don't get me wrong, but it wasn't as prominent as it has been at other tournaments. So when we look at Battle of the Brands later, you're going to notice that there was a big shift. But at the end of the day, Darren Ong winning his very first PBA title, ended up taking the win. EJ Tackett again made the step ladder, made it look really good, threw the Venom Shock and the Evoke Hysteria again. But Darren Ong, I believe, was throwing a Black Hammer the entire time, and he threw 3 300s, I believe, in qualifying for the entire World Series. Huge shout out to him. Awesome accomplishment to win your first title for another international player. Moving on, we had the highest scoring pattern of the tournament, Chameleon. Chameleon usually is pretty tough. However, the players whacked him. It took like a 240 average to make the cut. Scores were absolutely through the roof. There were a ton of 300s, a lot of really, really cool games, a lot of strikes in general. It turned into a carry contest for a while. Now, remember, these are the best in the world. So you put an average bowler on this, they're not going to do that well. It's still a very, very hard pattern. It's not a house shot by any means. But the top 5 ended up being Toon Hakeem, Kevin McCune, Andrew Anderson, EJ Tackett, and Mitch Hoope. Mitch ended up slaughtering everything during this tournament, during this pattern. I believe he almost broke the scoring record. I believe Darren Ong did too, if I'm not mistaken, that those two tied and almost beat the scoring record set earlier in the season. However, that was the top 5 for the show. And overall ended up being Toon Hakeem, who won very first title, first Malaysian bowler to win a PBA title. We've had a few Malaysian bowlers making their runs on the PBA the last couple of weeks, but we have someone who finally won it. Toon ended up taking it away, and he beat Kevin McCune, and Kevin McCune was throwing it really well all weekend. Otherwise, Andrew made the show. We had an EJ and Andrew match, which was great. We had Mitch Hoope make it, so a really, really fun telecast there. A lot of strikes, less than in qualifying, but still a ton of strikes. All right, 2 tournaments left. This time we're at Shark. Shark is a 48-foot pattern, super long. Scores were a little bit lower. However, this was the lefty show. Lefties absolutely crushed Shark. They were all throwing urethane. Very, very weird, but there was a lot of volume, so then urethane looks a lot better. So a lot of the two-handed lefties, high-rev lefties, ended up doing really, really well. So that's why the step ladder was EJ Tackett, Tom Smallwood, Packy Hanrahan, Tim Foy, and then Jesper. But then if you go below that, we have Justin Knowles down there. We have Jacob Buttruff down in the qualifying. So we had a lot of other lefties. Rafiq Ishmael made it again. So a lot of lefties ended up doing really, really well. I believe it might have been Justin Knowles who ended up popping off for a lot of 300s, or Matt Russo, one or the other, during Shark with an IQ 78. But going to the step ladder, we had EJ making his run. EJ ended up reigning supreme over other motive rep Tom Smallwood. So EJ making his first win after all of the step ladders he's been on. This is number 5, I believe, in a row. Number 5 step ladder that he's been on. And he ended up winning it. Evoke Hysteria and Venom Shock is all he threw yet again. Tom Smallwood threw the Jackal Onyx and it looked really good for a while. And then also a Black Venom. So Motive is really making a run at being a really, really good brand compared to the other ones. So shout out to them. Otherwise, a couple decent matches, nothing too crazy before that. It was a lot of names that you recognize a little bit more. Packy making his first show was great. He hasn't had a very good season, but EJ Taggett ended up reigning supreme, making $20,000 for winning this event. And yes, every single animal pattern, it's $20,000 for first place. All right, and then last but not least is the overall world championship. So all the qualifying for the other animal patterns that we mentioned gets combined, and then there's match play for the top 1/3 of bowlers, I believe, trying to make the world championship show. In the world championship, it is $100,000 for first place. So this is the one you want to win. And the top 5 was almost as expected. EJ made every single finals, so he is, of course, up there. He actually only got the 2 seed because Jason Belmonte, even though he didn't make all 5 step ladders, he was crushing them in qualifying and was able to sneak around EJ in the final seconds of match play. So the top 5 was Jason Belmonte, EJ Tackett, Tim Foy, David Boog Kroll making it into 4th. He didn't make a single telecast, but then he was able to sneak onto the World Championship show. And then BJ Moore, same exact case. Ended up having a really good World Championship, just didn't make any of the other TV shows. So it was a very, very fun telecast. At the end of the day, it came down to the semifinal match, which was wild. EJ came in throwing the Evoke Hysteria again. Tim Foy was throwing it really, really well. He was beating EJ the entire match. We get to the final frame. EJ needs a strike to win, and he goes Brooklyn and carries the 6-pin to beat Tim Foy. Tim Foy had a really good set. He threw really good strikes in the 10th frame to make EJ show up, and EJ got a nice lucky break to be able to make it to the finals, where he went against Jason Belmonte. That was the final we all wanted to see. EJ still throwing the Evoke Hysteria. I don't know exactly what Belmo was throwing. I was kind of on and off on the event because I was in a tournament at the time. But overall, ended up being EJ Tackett needing 2 strikes in the 10th to win. Does that, beats Jason, shuts him out, and wins his 3rd straight World Championship. He won a 3-peat for World Championships, another $100,000. Able to beat Jason Belmonte. Belmo was trying to make his claim that I am better than EJ. It didn't unfortunately happen this time. EJ virtually cements himself as player of the year. Now, the other big storyline, as I mentioned early in the video, the Evoke Hysteria. This thing was on every telecast. Part of that was because of EJ, but the other Motive staffers, this is all they threw. Is this going to be the best ball of the year? Is this already in ball of the year talks, even though it just got released? It has already won a couple titles. It's made a ton of telecasts. Is the ball that good? Or are the Motive staffers just making it look really, really good? So we had a lot of really cool storylines come out of that. The Evoke Hysteria being good. EJ basically cementing player of the year. He won 2 majors. I believe that was his 4th tournament win of the season. So he basically has already run away with it. I think he can miss every cut from now to the end of the season, and he will still win player of the year. He is just that good right now, that dominant. However, I fully expect to see him at the Masters and a couple other tournaments, probably in the top 5. He's just throwing it too good right now. So we've had a lot of really cool storylines from the World Series, a grueling couple of weeks of bowling. Make sure to go watch all the telecasts back. I believe they're on Fox Sports. They were all really, really fun to watch. But coming up next, starting already very, very soon, / when this video comes out, the USBC Masters. This is the most fun tournament of the year, in my opinion. I believe there's 400 plus bowlers that are out in Michigan right now bowling. So there's 3 different squads going on. This is the massive bracket of bowlers, double elimination, 64-person bracket that ends up being created from this. So make sure to go watch that. If you ever want to watch qualifying or a match play, the Masters is the one to watch. Go check out Bowl TV. That's where it's all going to be at. Should be a really, really fun week. We have a lot of really cool storylines from that, from people who can win multiple USBC Masters, but this is also the event that amateurs have the best chance of making the TV show because anybody could join the USBC Masters. So I'll have another video for the Masters coming out very soon. Hope you guys enjoy these kinds of videos. Please let me know in the comments if you do, and I will see you on the next one.